All right, Robert Emmons, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
So you are a professor of psychology, but your expertise is on gratitude. This is interesting because I never heard of a professor of gratitude until I came across your work. What got you interested in studying gratitude? Was there some event that happened in your life that drew you to that subject?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. There's not too many of us that do this. There's a few more now than there were back 20 years ago when I first started. And it's a very interesting story. And I won't tell the whole thing because that'll take up all of our time. But what got me in literally was that this was an assignment. I was actually asked or invited to study gratitude. I was going to a conference that some folks were arranging. And one of the topics that they wanted to discuss at this conference was gratitude. And they said, okay, we don't have an expert. We need someone to go out there and figure out and to canvass the research literature and come and tell us, what do we know about gratitude? Well, it turned out that we didn't know anything about it because there was no research on the topic. So I began conducting research right away. And it was awesome because, it's not often you can actually find something that's been totally ignored or forgotten. And for a long time, I was referring to gratitude as the forgotten factor in happiness research and in psychology more generally. And so I set about to try to change that. And it was really the best assignment I was ever given and still working on it today, 20 years later. Normally we choose what we want to study, but it seems like in this case that gratitude chose me.
Well, here's an interesting question. Why had it been ignored for so long? Because gratitude's such a important part of human existence, right?
Well, it's wild. I mean, it goes so way back there. The ideas, what people have said about it. I mean, we can go back, a couple thousand years. I mean, for centuries, philosophers and others who were around and writing about the human condition would say things like gratitude is the greatest of the virtues. It's the secret to life. And I think probably because it was so associated with either philosophy or maybe religion and spirituality that psychology tended to overlook it, or it could be it just was underestimated. I think sometimes we think it's very simple. It's just saying thank you. And it's just a matter of politeness or manners or civility. And there's really not much more interesting to it than that. It turns out that that's totally wrong.
Or that raises the next question. Okay, so gratitude in your work is more than just saying thank you.
Yes.
So how exactly do you define gratitude?
Yeah, so I like to make a distinction because I'm a psychologist and I traffic in the arena of ideas and definitions. We tend to muddy the waters very, very quickly and very easily. And so I don't like to disappoint. And so the way I think about gratitude and define it is that I think it comes about as in terms of two steps or two stages of what I call information processing. So how we make sense out of life. One is that we see some good things in life. We see goodness around us. Maybe we see goodness in us, in other people. And so we affirm that there are some good things. There are some benefits or blessings or gifts, whatever language you feel comfortable using. So one is just affirming or acknowledging there are good things in my life. And then the second step or second stage is recognizing that the source of this goodness is outside of us. Right? And that's so important. It's so crucial. It makes all the difference seeing that this good thing is out there, but it's being given to us for our benefit. It's nothing we did to create it, to make it happen, right? So gratitude comes to us. It's not created by us. It's received. It's not achieved, as I've said. And that makes all the difference, just this slight tweaking of how we think about it. So basically, two words: affirmation and recognition of this goodness.
And is gratitude, would you decide, is it a feeling? Like once you recognize and affirm, like do you feel something?
Well, that's part of the complexity of it. See, we just started our discussion and already we see there's so many distinctions and layers and levels to it. It's actually, it's a feeling. It's certainly an emotion, but it's based on thinking. So if we think a certain way, we have this feeling. If we see that other people are doing something for us, for example, providing us with a gift, a benefit, a kindness, a favor that, we couldn't necessarily provide for ourselves or was surprising. We know that they intended to benefit us, maybe at some cost, time, effort, whatever to themselves. Then gratitude is the feeling that we have that results from this awareness or this perception of this other person providing us with this benefit. So you're right, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, but it's based on thought.
And it sounds like, it's to add to the complexity of gratitude, that it also requires humility because you have to recognize that you can't do everything for yourself.
Beautiful. I mean, humility is really the foundation, I think. This just sensing incompleteness, right? Sensing imperfection, sensing that we are dependent upon others for who we are, where we are in life. I mean, it really, that I think that begins with that fundamental awareness.
So one thing that's interesting, as you said, 20 years ago, people weren't really talking about gratitude in psychology. But thanks to your research, there's been lots of talk on blogs and books, Oprah, like gratitude journals and the like in pop culture. But you note in your book that, a lot of this attention takes form of what you call gratitude Lite. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it seemed to me when I began studying this and reading some of the articles, more popular sources, treatments of gratitude, so divorced from the traditional conceptions of gratitude as a virtue. So let me define what I mean by that. First, that gratitude would often be reduced to a tactic or to a strategy for becoming happier, right, or becoming healthier, or for living one's best life now. And it's true that the practice of gratitude certainly does have consequences and implications for happiness, for joy, for satisfaction, contentment, all the sorts of things we seem to want out of life. But just to reduce it to that seemed to really cheapen it, I think, to result in this, what I call this gratitude Lite, Lite. It seems that, to me, gratitude is more of a virtue. It really says something fundamental about who we are and has implications for how we should live our lives, right? What we should do and who we should be, how we should live. And this is the language of virtue, right? It's what makes life better for ourselves as well as for others. And so, just to reduce it to a set of 5 ways to become happier, and here's one of them: list your blessings, right? Count your blessings. Do a little gratitude on the side. That may or may not work. Certainly, it could work in the short term, but I think it lessens the value. It doesn't do justice to the complexity of gratitude.
Right. You turn gratitude in a selfish thing, right? It's like, I'm doing this for me. I'm not saying
that's right. You're totally focused on how you're doing, what's your personal gain in this, and it just really distorts the meaning of it, which is really about the other person, right? It's really about noticing. It's also about giving back the good that you've received. So we know there's this link between receiving and then giving back or paying forward the good that you've received and been provided. And if the focus is totally on the self, it reduces it again to this tactic or this strategy.
So it sounds like, okay, you're grateful, like at any virtue, right? We're going back to Aristotle here. You do the virtue for the sake of virtue. Right. And if you're happy, that's just a byproduct.
It's a byproduct. It's a side effect. And sometimes we're grateful and it doesn't make us happy. We're grateful because we know it's the right thing to do. We know it's good to give credit, to thank people who have helped us, who are bringing benefit and value to the world. It's the right thing to do. It's, I guess it's part of a larger virtue, maybe justice or something like that, right? And we know the opposite of gratitude is certainly a tremendously negative vice. That is ingratitude, right? It's one of the worst things that people can say about you, that you're ungrateful. So gratitude is a virtue for sure, but ingratitude is an accusation, right? And it seems to me that if we don't choose gratitude by default, we're choosing ingratitude.
So as you've been talking, I've noticed you've been talking about being grateful to person. But I mean, some things we have, like just existence itself, can't be attributed to a single person, right? It could be, yes. I mean, some people say it's God, or there's people, it's just like, well, it's just universe. So what about, can you express gratitude for things like that? Like, oh, the sky is beautiful or whatever.
Absolutely, because you're seeing value. So it does fit the definition in the sense, in a broad sense, that is, you're seeing goodness. You're affirming that there are good things in life, whether it's life itself, whether it's the sky, a beautiful sunset, whether it's freedom and a democracy. I mean, the list goes on, and people write these sorts of things down when they're asked to keep a journal of what they're grateful for. But also they realize at the same time, we realize, you and me, that, we didn't do anything to bring this about, right? We did nothing to create the sunset or the blue sky or life itself. And so we recognize that this is beyond ourselves. And so there is a difference, technically, I mean, philosophically, between gratitude to someone and gratitude for something. But it turns out they tend to work the same way when it comes to, enhancing our life and making our lives better in various ways.
Because it requires that you have to be humble, realize things are there outside of yourself that you have.
That's right.
So what are some of the myths that are out there about gratitude that you've seen pop up in the past few years?
Yeah, I'd say one of the big ones is that gratitude makes us complacent or actually lazy. I guess maybe a better way to phrase that is that gratitude undercuts ambition. So the idea is that, if we're grateful for something, it means we're satisfied, we're complacent, we're not going to, give any effort anymore. We just say, I'm happy with what I have or what my situation is in life. And that's it, right? I'm not going to be motivated to do anything, just going to sit around, right? Lethargic, passive, maybe. It turns out totally false, right? I mean, it couldn't be more false. There's a number of studies showing that gratitude actually motivates us to do more. It inspires us. It's energizing, right? That it's an engine for progress, as one author said. And so that's one of the big myths. And so we can show that that's really false. It actually leads to the opposite. It leads a person to be more inspired, to give back, to be generous, to be more successful in achieving their goals. Purpose and gratitude go together. So a grateful person is purpose driven. They feel more energetic, more enthusiastic. They go out there and they're just more determined. And other people want to help them out because their relationships are stronger, more connected. Their relationships are strengthened through expressing gratitude. And so many times, of course, we need people to help us achieve our goals. And gratitude can be a very, facilitative force in that toward that purpose.
Yeah, we just had a podcast guest on talking about leadership in any organization. And he said, we talked about how most people, they leave a job not because they're not getting paid enough. Typically they leave, they just don't feel like they're appreciated. And he's making the point that what people want most often is they want to be noticed and needed. And saying thank you seems like that's one way to, encourage people to work harder and for you to work harder as well.
Yes, exactly. It's one of the reasons why sometimes it's, I think, not as expressed as often as it could be in organizational settings and in workplaces, is because the belief that if I thank, my employees, they're going to be more satisfied or complacent and not try as hard, lose their edge. And I don't know where that comes from, that idea, because it's totally false, and it's false in everyday life. And it's the little research that we know that's relevant to that also shows that it's, gratitude is energizing, it's inspiring. All right. If someone thanks you, if you get thanked around the house for doing an errand or a project or a chore or whatever, you're going to be more likely to do it the next time.
Right.
So it seems to me to be very commonsensical.
So besides gratitude causing you to lose your edge, any other myths that you've seen out there?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that sometimes festers under the surface is that, gratitude is all fine and well when life is going well, when life is full of, victories and success and benefits, and our relationships are firing on all cylinders. We're healthy. Kids are doing well, right? Successful, and so on. That's when gratitude is okay. That's when it's, strongest. That's where it has its potential. But it turns out that gratitude is also very, very beneficial. In fact, even maybe more important during difficult times of stress and struggle and trial and tribulation. In the face of suffering, gratitude can be beneficial. Not that you're grateful for these circumstances, right? You lose stuff. We're going through very terrible time, in California right now with wildfires, and nobody's grateful that they've lost everything. But sometimes rising from the ashes is a feeling of thankfulness that, we still have, our family, we have opportunities, we have possibilities. And so we often see that people will choose gratitude as an attitude in difficult times. It helps them get through these times. It's I think, an aspect of resiliency that fuels and fires hope in a person's life. So that would be, I think, another myth, that you can't be grateful going through difficult times. Well, we know every day in every way that people are grateful, even though they face big challenges in life.
Yeah, that really hit home to me, because I've known in my life when I've had really hard times, I'm not grateful that I'm going through that specific hard time. What I am grateful for are, the people who come to my aid and comfort me and my family and that during that
Yeah.
you become more attuned and aware of that whenever you are. It makes it more acute, the gratitude.
Well, I think it goes back to Brett, what you said earlier about humility, is that it forces us to become more dependent upon others. We realize in this situation that we can't do it by ourselves. We can't go at it alone. And again, when life is going well, you can live under this illusion of self-sufficiency and autonomy. But then, when life goes off the deep end, we get to the end of the rope. That's when we realize how much we depend upon other people, and that sets the stage for the feeling of gratitude.
So we've been talking about we're not grateful. We don't exercise the virtue of gratitude just so we can feel better. But there are some happy side effects of working on the virtue of gratitude. So what are some of those happy side effects of gratitude?
Yeah. So, right from the start, that was the very first research project that I did, was to ask people to keep a gratitude journal, write down things that they were grateful for on a regular basis. And it seemed to me that the philosophical literature and other writings, spiritual writings, suggested there's a link between a grateful focus and higher overall emotional functioning. And so we found that when people were in this gratitude focus condition, that is kind of bringing it to awareness and calling their attention to it, their lives just improved many ways. Emotionally, they became happier, more joyful. They became more energetic. They became more attentive. It brought a new lease to their lives, is what people reported. Relationally, we found that people, when they were practicing gratitude, they felt closer, more connected to others, less lonely, less isolated. Emotionally, we found that they experienced less stress, less depression, less anxiety. So while gratitude was magnifying the good in their lives, it was also reducing, or I like to say it's rescuing us from the bad, from the negativity, from anxiety, from a sense of entitlement, a sense of resentment. So all those things which rob us of our happiness. Gratitude works in both directions, amplifying or pumping up the good, and then reducing or rescuing us from the negative. And then third, improving and strengthening our relationships, because gratitude really is an other focused emotion. It makes our relationships stronger, more connected. It helps them, it keeps them from sputtering and conking out, our relationships. And I think that's where gratitude has its biggest effect, where you really see the power and potential of gratitude, is in the connective or relational aspect of life.
Yeah, I thought the research on depression and anxiety was particularly interesting. Some of the research shows just exercising gratitude on a daily or weekly basis can have a profound impact on reducing feelings of depression and anxiety.
It's really protective in that sense. I think it's really a simple incompatibility idea with different feelings that are really opposites. You can't really be depressed and grateful at the same. You can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. One of my gratitude heroes and mentors, he said that we're never more than one grateful thought away from peace of heart, right? Kind of calmness, contentment. Right. When he also said, the same person also said that gratitude makes us fearless, right? Gratefulness and fearlessness. You can't see, when you look at life through a lens of gratitude, you tend to focus on things like abundance and safety, surplus, sufficiency, overflow. You think of all these terms which are more or less, synonyms for each other, or that they share a same conceptual space. It's just calming to see life that way. Whereas if you focus more on a posture of, insufficiency, deficit, insecurity, right? That generates feelings of anxiety and possibly, depression, if you believe that your situation is going to stay like that in the future. So I think we're really starting to learn ways in which gratitude rescues us from conditions like depression and anxiety.
And then, as you mentioned, it reduces stress, which not only affects you psychologically, but physiologically as well, too. So expressing, gratitude on a regular basis can make you healthier.
Well, some of the most amazing findings with respect to gratitude are exactly in that realm of physiology, in the medical benefits. That research is showing that gratitude is good medicine. It's really amazing. That's what, really struck me right from the beginning, was that the practice of gratitude reaps benefits physiologically from things like just health behaviors, like, sleeping better, for example. We all need more sleep, right? We're all sleep deprived. And there's about 8 good solid studies linking better sleep quality and quantity to gratitude. Gratitude motivates people to exercise more. It reduces their blood pressure. It increases healthy cholesterol, right? I mean, it's amazing that something seemingly as simple and under the radar as gratitude can have so many health benefits. And now the latest generation of research is trying to unpack this at a more molecular level, looking at clinical biomarkers of health and aging, things like inflammation, for example, things like the length of your telomeres in your chromosomes, which is related to aging. So I think we're going to uncover more and more ways in the next 5 to 10 years showing that gratitude affects health through some of these physiological mechanisms.
Yeah, that's amazing. But again, to reiterate, like you shouldn't be grateful just so you can get these side effects. It's like, I think Viktor Frankl said something like, if you make happiness your target, like you're going to miss all the time, right? So
that's right. Happiness pursued eludes, right? But if you don't, I can't remember the rest of the saying. But if you go for it indirectly, then you'll be more successful at it. And I think that's the way it is even with gratitude itself. Can you actually go directly at gratitude? And I'm not so sure. Lately, I'm thinking it's more like happiness, right? Because if we go for it directly, we go back to where we were at the beginning, talking about it as this approach that, is all focused on me and how am I doing, right? Am I more grateful than I was yesterday? Am I more grateful than the person next door or the person, in the bed next to me? And we start to get engaged in this comparison process, which can be very deadly for our happiness. And so if we focus on gratitude, it takes our focus off of ourselves, not how we're doing, but really how other people have helped us out, right? I talk about how gratitude as a checklist form of happiness or to-do list. I'm going to put on my list today. I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to count my blessings, and then that's it. Boom. I can check that off. I've done that task for the day. And I just don't think it's that accurate or that effective. It has to be really more integrated into everyday life. It can't be something that we just add on or tack on, because it's really not an app that we can add on. It's an entirely new operating system. I've written about that. I think that really seems to mesh with the psychological and medical research.
So yeah, it sounds like gratitude is a mindset. Like you have to have a more open and aware mindset so that you notice things that you can be grateful for when they do pop up, instead of if you're just like narrowed focus and trying to look for, you're probably going to miss things that you otherwise would have saw if you had a more open focus.
Well, you'll miss them, or you take them for granted, or you think that you deserve them, right? The language that we use, right? The internal monologue or dialogue inside is just so important, right? A good thing can happen, and two people could equally notice the good thing, but one expected it, right? One felt that they deserved it, that they were entitled to it. And the other one said, no, this is above and beyond what I thought I was going to get. This is an example of surplus or abundance. They were surprised by it. And the emotional reaction will be 180 degrees opposite in those two cases.
So we've been talking about gratitude. So it's a virtue. That's something you practice, like Aristotle said, but it's also a character trait that you develop with practicing the virtue. So, I mean, is gratitude sort of like a temperament or related to temperament, right? Like, I guess neuroticism or some of the other ones where they're like, some people are born, I guess the question I'm asking, are some people born more grateful than others?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think we all have the capacity for it, right? There's a potential for it, like kindness, for example, right? Or generosity, or humility, or any of these other virtues that are in most people's lists of basic human virtues. But I think it has to be fleshed out. I think it has to be taught, or it could be caught by having appropriate role models, whether they're parents or teachers or mentors or whoever. And we know there's differences between people and the capacity for gratitude, even within the same family. I mean, I have two sons, and one of them is much more grateful than the other one. We think we did the same thing, treated them, raised them the same way, but they turn out to be very different. So there hasn't been a whole lot of biological studies looking at factors related to heritability with gratitude. It doesn't seem to be quite as strongly wired in as some of these other ones that you mentioned, like extroversion or emotional stability. But I think some of these probably change our potential for gratitude. I think it's much easier for an extroverted person and one who's agreeable and more emotionally stable to be grateful. It tends to go along with those qualities, empathy, humility, as you mentioned. And a person who is more maybe introverted or less agreeable, more prone to negative emotionality is going to have a more difficult time. But I think we know this from our research and from the research taking place all around the world, that people can learn gratitude. And many of those who show the most gain in changes in gratitude are the ones who had the most work to do, are the ones who started in the more negative side of the spectrum. And they show the most benefits from a gratitude practice.
All right, that's good. So it is learnable. You can get better at it. It's a skill that you can develop and acquire.
I mean, I wouldn't do this stuff if I thought I couldn't learn it. It's I would be in some other line of work, right? But you're right. There is a dogma in psychology, especially. And I was trained in personality psychology 32 years ago when I got my PhD. And the dogma was that you can't change personality. It's set in stone. It's hardwired in there and can't do much about it. And a person who's extroverted at age 8, it's going to be the same at 18, 38, and 88, right? But now we know that, with some practice, you can move some of these dimensions around, and gratitude seems to be one of those that is modifiable with some practice.
Well, before we get into tactics, I know I don't like talking about gratitude tactics, but things we can do to develop the skill and the mindset of gratitude. I want to ask this. I want to do the flip side. Mm-hmm. So there was an essay that we published on our site from 1902, written by this guy named William George Jordan, and it was called "The Courage to Face Ingratitude." So he's talking about when you do kind things or good things for people, we often expect to be thanked for that. But oftentimes, because gratitude is often overlooked, we take things for granted, we don't get thanked. How do you, I don't know, have you researched that at all? Like not thanking, but being thanked, or how to deal with that?
I should read that article, first of all. It sounds really interesting. One of the things I've often noticed is that how closely, how carefully we monitor other people's gratitude or lack thereof. It's almost like we painstakingly monitor, we're obsessed by it. And I know this is true because one of the questions I get asked most frequently when I give lectures and talks to public audiences on gratitude, almost invariably, not quite every talk, but more so than any other question is, how can I get so-and-so, fill in the blank, to be more grateful? Oh, it's a son, it's a daughter, it's a teenager, it's a spouse, it's a coworker. Like, we're obsessed with other people's level of gratitude, or usually it's ingratitude, right? And we want to correct them, we want to fix them and change them and move them. And so there is something about it that it's a signal to us, I think, in our relationships. You think about, and I try to think about, why are we so obsessed with monitoring other people's levels of gratitude? And I think it's because gratitude, being a virtue, is a signal that this is a good person, right? That this is a person we can trust. This is a person we can rely on. And so we're making these judgments, usually at an unconscious level, on a regular basis. And that's one piece of information that we use. Now, closer to home, we want that just because we know it's going to bring relational harmony. Right? If we're living with a person who is, focused on the bad all the time, they're focused on what life is lacking. They're focused on this other end of the continuum that I mentioned. They're focused more on insufficiency and insecurity and a sense of resentment, entitlement. We know life is going to run more smoothly if they can at least move up to a non-gratitude point on the scale, as opposed to an ingratitude point on the scale. But yeah, we're totally fixated on the other person and monitoring that and trying to do something about it.
Right. So it sounds like the more grateful you are, the more courage you have to face ingratitude.
You become a role model too for those people around you, right? So instead of, worry about fixing that person, maybe express more gratitude toward that person or for that person. Because gratitude is a virtue, we know it's more often caught than taught. So there's a few studies looking developmentally with parents and kids, and they find that the best predictor of a child's gratitude is the mother's or the father's gratitude. And then it's the expression of gratitude within the family. So becoming a role model, and then encouraging gratitude, reinforcing gratitude when you see it in your children is some of the best ways in which you can raise a grateful child.
So let's talk about things we can do to exercise and develop the virtue of gratitude. So we've been talking about gratitude journals. Does that have to look like a certain way? Is there a format, or is it just you just free write and say this is what I'm grateful for, yada yada?
Yeah, because so many studies now have been published, there gratitude journaling seems to be an entire industry. And
No, yeah, you can buy journals that are gratitude journals now.
oh, and now everyone's developing a new one or a new kind of twist on it, and so forth. They're developing an app, that you can do gratitude journaling, on your phone and so on. It turns out, it really doesn't matter that much, how you do it, whether you do it, for example, people ask me, well, should I journal at the beginning of the day or the end of the day or during the day or whatever? I say, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the point is that you're doing something to pay attention to gratitude inspiring events or circumstances in your life. I mean, the journal works because it helps us to remember and to recall. And gratitude is, if nothing else, it's based on memory, right? Benefits, good things we've received, goodness in life, and just becoming focused on that so we don't overlook them, so we don't ignore them or take them for granted. So, a lot of people don't keep a journal at all, but they're some of the most grateful people that I know. It's just become more of a habit for them. It's become more just a way of looking at life, a lens through which they view life. And I mean, that's ultimately, I think, where most people want to get to. That's where I want to get to, why I do this stuff. But what keeps me studying gratitude is because I know I need it, and because I'm forgetful. And I have to remember to practice gratitude every day, because every day I forget to practice gratitude because I'm forgetful, like most people, if we're honest and we admit that. So it doesn't really much matter, how you do it. Just doing it makes the difference. And it doesn't matter how often. There was a debate for a while there. If you do it too often, does it wear off? And I guess, I mean, if you certainly did it in terms of this to-do list, write down 5 things, and stop and do that, several times a day, it's going to get kind of disruptive and start to feel like a burden. The last thing we want gratitude to do is to be a burden. Gratitude should make our life easier and make it freer and make us feel lighter. I think gratitude liberates us in a lot of ways. And, if we see this as drudgery, as a to-do list, it's going to have the opposite effect.
So gratitude journal, doesn't matter how you do it, can be really useful. I imagine a more powerful way to express gratitude or experience that virtue of gratitude is if you're grateful towards a person, actually tell that person how grateful you are.
One of the most important studies that was published the last couple of years did actually examine both a reflection, just the typical or traditional way I started, just by having people write things they were grateful for, and also had a second condition where they went out and they expressed that gratitude that they wrote about, either through their social media or in person-to-person contact. And as you would expect, that was more powerful. The combination of the private component with the public expression was more powerful than just the private expression. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Gratitude is an emotion, and emotions call for action. There's what psychologists call an action tendency associated with an emotion, right? When we're angry, we want to strike out at someone. When we're anxious or fearful, we want to avoid the situation that's making us afraid. When we're feeling love, affection, we want to, move toward the object of our affection. When we're grateful, we want to give back the goodness. We want to express that gratitude. We want to say thank you. So not having the opportunity to do so by just having a private component, I think, underestimates its power and its potential. So certainly the expression is a big part of, I think, why gratitude works.
Yeah, William James talked about, I remember I just got done, I was reading some William James the other day, and he talked about, you don't want to let your emotions go to waste. If you're feeling something.
Right. They're there for a reason.
Right.
They're built in there. They serve an important function.
Right. And he says, if you feel something, you don't take action, you're just training your mind to not take action whenever you feel that.
Well, then how many times do we feel, a sense of regret, right? I mean, we wished we had thanked that person.
Right.
We wished we had done that, right? We wish we had written that letter, and now it's too late. And maybe we wish we had expressed gratitude to that parent or grandparent or friend or teacher or mentor, and now they're gone. And so we don't want to have that unfinished business.
What do you think? I mean, this is Thanksgiving week. Do you have any gratitude practices you suggest families do together during the holiday season?
Right. So, I mean, Thanksgiving, of course, is a great time. I mean, it explicitly draws us to the source of gratitude and sources in our lives. Our annual gratitude holiday, of course, it doesn't have to be just Thanksgiving. Been given this some thought, especially with yesterday or Sunday being Veterans Day. I mean, that's a gratitude holiday. Most holidays are actually gratitude holidays when you think about it, right? We're celebrating, we're remembering Mother's Day, Father's Day, right? I mean, the list goes on and on. But gratitude and Thanksgiving, of course, go hand in hand, and it's very valuable just because at least for one day, right? No matter how ungrateful or how forgetful we are, the rest of the year, at least one day, our attention is called toward gratitude. And the key to me, at least, someone who studies this and thinks you should be grateful on a daily basis, not just that one day, but the other 364, is that we shouldn't leave gratitude on the Thanksgiving table. Right? It's such a wasted opportunity. And so, I mean, everyone has their own rituals, their own practices, whether it's the traditional, going around the table and saying what you're grateful for this Thanksgiving, or just, families with smaller children will have other rituals that'll be more practical and more focused on doing something, right? Whether it's, giving away a gift to someone in the community, whether it's drawing a picture of something that you're grateful for. I think a really useful thing to do within families is to do like a genealogy, like a family tree, right? It doesn't have to be that complicated and involved, but I think it's important for people to know where they came from, right? Who made them, in a sense, right? Their ancestry. And that can help us go back generations and help us show that, where we are today and who we are today is based on those who came before us. And that can be very, satisfying and helpful within families, especially nowadays where families are so scattered. And you don't know. And my kids don't, their grandparents and on my wife's side, live on the other side of the country. My parents are both passed on now, so they don't have that. So just knowing that where they came, this genealogy can be super important in helping us develop a sense of gratitude and for who we are and where we came from.
Yeah, I've seen studies too that when kids know about their genealogy, they're somehow more resilient because they can see that they're not the reason of their existence. Like there are other people that came before them, and also they can see the stories of their ancestors saying, well, great grandpa sailed from Italy to here and he hit on hard times, but through hard work he got up, and then this hard time happened, and then but he got over it. So you can see resilience in your own family, and you think, well, if great whatever is able to do that, I'm able to handle my problems.
That's excellent, right? And just seeing that as part of your identity, who you are. I'm an Emmons, right? I'm a Robinson, whoever it is, right? It's like this is who we are, right? And so, and whether it's relatives or just how our lives have been made more comfortable by the sacrifice of those who came before us. Right. And why shouldn't that be also the focus of Thanksgiving? You see, Thanksgiving as a time to practice gratitude is simply a chance to focus on the unseen heroes, the unseen people or processes or forces that gave us the opportunities that we have right now. And all of that ties into, I think, very nicely this particular holiday.
Well, Robert, is there some place people can go to learn more about your work?
Well, I've written several books, trade books on gratitude that share the science of gratitude, share the practices of gratitude, and how to get more of it, or how do we let gratitude get more of us, which I think is an interesting way to approach this challenge as well. And so, you can go to Amazon, the usual Barnes & Noble, the usual suspects online, and check out my first book was called Thanks, How Practicing Gratitude Can Make You Happier. Gratitude Works, which was my second book, is a little bit more practice focused. It includes a 21-day challenge for deepening one's level of gratitude with several different practices. Then my last book, which I think my favorite, is called The Little Book of Gratitude. That has a lot of actionable techniques, about 35 specific exercises and practices that a person can engage in to practice gratitude, to build this into their lives so that they can, capitalize on the power and potential of gratitude to heal, to energize, and to change their lives. And so, your local bookstore, if you still have one, or online, those three would be the top picks.
Well, Robert, thank you for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Well, the pleasure's mine. Thank you for having me. Happy Thanksgiving to you, to your listeners.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you, Brad.
My guest today was Dr. Robert Emmons. He is the author of several books on gratitude, including his latest, The Little Book of Gratitude. All of them are available on Amazon.com. Also, check out our show notes at aom.is/gratitude, where you can find links to resources where you can delve deeper into this topic.